Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me, I was really fortunate that the clients I coach and the people that I work with, I got to experience a lot of individuals who were vulnerable with me, but they experienced being lonely and successful. And lonely success didn't bring happiness. And I know that one thing that me and my wife are always talking about, especially because we're in a country where we don't have any family, we had to start from scratch in our friendship, work, and everything was...
I heard you say in a podcast of how important family is to your wife, for example.
For my wife, it's huge. Like her personal family is like everything to her. Like that's her greatest value. But here we had to build our family.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we constantly do is we try and make a concerted effort in order to cultivate and curate our community in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating to me because, again, perception comes in where most people say to me, well, LA is a very shallow place. Like LA is a very fake place. And I'll say, well, I found some of my best friends here and incredible human beings. How much does that perception of a place or a space or a person actually also make us more lonely? Because I find sometimes that loneliness is created by perception. Like if we're scared of being vulnerable with someone, it's hard that someone will be vulnerable with us, right? So what do we need to do in order to build deeper relationships for healing and in this path that you're suggesting?
Well, first of all, it occurs to me that loneliness is always perception. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Alone is just a fact and that we can embrace and make decisions about. Loneliness has got an emotional charge to it. And that's very much a matter of perception. You can be alone and not be lonely. And you can be surrounded by all kinds of people and be completely lonely. So that depends, how open am I? How vulnerable am I really willing to be? What defenses have I erected around myself to protect myself that keeps me from really contacting other people? So I think we unwittingly generate loneliness. There's also something else that happens, and you referred to this earlier. You talked about elders. So in our society, we don't talk about elders. We talk about the elderly. It's not the same. In our society that defines people so much in terms of their economic value, we tend to discard people that are not perceived as having economic value either as producers or consumers. So this society generates a lot of loneliness just because it's materialistic values. And in other functioning cultures, elders are not only they're respected, but they have a purpose. They have the wisdom, they have the experience, they have the vision, they have let go of a lot of the attachments that youth invariably engages with. So they have a lot to offer. So loneliness is also created in a society that has a very rigid and limited set of values.
Yeah, I love the change in the language again of the elders and the elderly. And it's, I always go back to that time in my life because it gave me so much. But growing up around people that were the same age, younger, older, and elder gave you so many different visions of life. And when I look back at my childhood or my young adulthood, I was constantly surrounded by people that were older than me, younger than me, much older than me and wiser than me.
Yeah.
And being able to have everyone's vantage point created a beautiful 360-degree picture of life.
Yes.
But most of today, we're only seeing 1 degree. If you spend time with only people your age, you're getting a very limited viewpoint of life versus if you're spending time with a much wider age range.
And you tend to get a much less mature and rounded view of life. One of the books I helped to write, co-wrote, is called Hold On To Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. And the point made in that book is precisely what you just articulated, which is that for so many people, their world begins and ends with their own age group, which is a developmental disaster. Because again, we evolved as creatures in touch with multiple people of multiple ages. And we've spent our time around people with multiple ages. When you isolate people by age, as this culture largely does, I mean, there's subgroups within subgroups within subcultures in a society, all based on very shallow identification with age. It just limits our development and limits our possibilities.